Good morning and welcome to Climate Matters, your monthly sustainability radio show brought to you by the city of Santa Fe. I'm your host, Neil Denton, and we come at you every month, every fourth Friday, talking about sustainability and resilience issues in and around Santa Fe. For this month's show, we're talking with P&M about an upcoming electric vehicle car show that they're planning on the Santa Fe Plaza. For that discussion, I'm joined by John Williamson and Eric from P&M. Eric, what was your last name?
Chavez, sorry.
Eric Chavez. Yeah, thanks for
Sorry.
joining me. How you guys doing?
Hey, thanks for having us. This is awesome. I'm really excited and always appreciate you having us on.
Absolutely.
Thanks for
Absolutely. Thank you so
joining me.
much, Neil.
So tell us about the electric vehicle car show.
Yeah, I guess I'll start off, and then John, you can jump on in as you see fit. But we're hosting an electric vehicle car show on October 1st. It's going to start at 10 a.m. It's going to be open to the public and free, which is always great. And we're planning on a really cool show. Planning on having more than 25 electric vehicles there. Some from us at P&M, some from the city of Santa Fe, some from just residents throughout New Mexico, and it's going to be really exciting. Going to give the opportunity for people to show off their electric vehicles, the opportunity for people to learn about electric vehicles. It's going to be a really cool event. We're really excited for it.
Great, we're
Mhm.
excited too. I'm going to be there all day next Saturday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Um, and in addition to all the electric vehicles, people can take a look at and learn more about. I understand there's going to be some entertainment on the stage. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna have some live bands, some local live bands that people can enjoy throughout the day. Uh, Sprinkled in throughout some speakers, some subject matter experts, if you will, on uh, all things electric vehicles. Charging infrastructure, cars themselves, programs that are coming soon, possible dealerships too. And I'll let John to speak to that a little bit more, but just kind of a little
Mhm.
preview of what's to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so this event is part of National Drive Electric Week, and which is kind of a national campaign to raise awareness about the benefits of driving and owning an EV or an electric vehicle. And so we're pretty proud to be able to sponsor a local event here in Santa Fe. There's lots of events happening all across the country between September 25th through October 2nd, and so we're just one part of it, but it's a really exciting part. And so our goal is to provide a platform for folks that might be EV curious to show up, to kind of kick the tires, to walk around, to talk to people that really own EVs and want to understand what it's really like. I mean, can you really drive from Santa Fe to El Paso in an EV? Can you really get to Durango? Can you really get to the West Coast or to Texas? So that's really what we're hoping to do is to provide a platform and an opportunity for folks to really just talk about EVs, to learn about EVs, and then to, of course, have a good time.
Well, and it's great. I participated in some of these events before and just talking to the person who, you're talking about getting to the West Coast. I remember talking to someone who had just done that in their electric vehicle and, just chatting with them about, how often they had to stop and things like that. It really helps you understand that we live in a time where the range of the new electric vehicles and the electric vehicle charging stations being installed across the country make it so it's a great decision to buy one right now if you're looking for a new car because electric vehicles here in Santa Fe have 70% less emissions than comparable vehicles. Of course, none of those emissions coming from the tailpipe. That's all related with power production. And as you all at P&M transition to more carbon-free energy production, that will gradually go to no emissions coming from
Mhm.
electric vehicles. So it's a really important part of a carbon-free future as we're all working together to do something about the crisis we're experiencing with the changing climate. So we're really glad to see P&M's leadership on this electric vehicle car show. And um, we at the city of Santa Fe are happy to be participating. I know the mayor will be speaking at the event.
Mhm.
Um, so tell me the story about how P&M started working on the transportation electrification program and really promoting EVs in the last, I don't know, I want to say 5 years or so.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of our, y- so I mean, we've been working on electrifying parts of our fleet, right? That makes sense for several years. P&M's initiatives specifically to accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles in our service territory originates from House Bill 521, which was enacted into law back in 2019, which required all investor-owned public utilities in the state of New Mexico to file an application with the PRC, the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission, to provide incentives, programs, offerings, infrastructure, in an effort to increase the adoption and accelerate the adoption of electric vehicle charging infrastructure in our service territory. And so that's really where it started. And so in December of 2020, we filed our first application with the PRC, and a modified version of that was approved. It's a very engaging process, and so lots of different stakeholders came together. It was informed, with the participation of lots of different stakeholders across New Mexico, and we feel that we were able to settle on a program that's kind of beneficial for everybody, right? So it's kind of the best of both worlds in that sense. And so that's where it started. And so it was approved in December of 2021, and we've been working furiously to kind of get it stood up and off the ground, so to speak, ever since then. And so I would have never thought that it's so hard to get some of these things up, but I mean, there's a ton of stuff that happens in the background. And so part of our program is we like to think of it as four pillars, right? And the first two are really the most exciting parts of the program. So the first one has to do with infrastructure rebates and infrastructure incentives. And so we've got two categories. There's residential rebates for customers who are interested in installing a qualifying level 2 charger at their home, at their residence. And then there's also non-residential charger rebates. And so these are really to offset some of the capital costs associated with installing make-ready infrastructure. So anything between kind of the P&M meter and the base of the charger. And it was really important that we structure the incentives that way, mostly because we didn't want to incentivize, the payment for P&M owned facilities, right? So a line extension to bring the service to the customer. And we also didn't want to provide an opportunity for customers who maybe manufacture and sell chargers to have an opportunity to get ratepayer money that way through installing their own chargers. And so really what we're doing is we're doing that kind of in between spot. So just between the meter and the base of the charger. And those are the rebates. We have a whole bunch of different classifications. So there's, in the non-residential category, there's workplace and fleet. So for folks that are interested in either installing charging infrastructure to fuel their fleets or to allow employees to charge while they're at the office or at their workplace. There's also multifamily charging infrastructure incentives. So these are for kind of apartment buildings where people maybe has a little bit less influence over what the property manager is able to install, right? So we're trying to offset some of the capital costs to install EV chargers there. We have a mass transit category, so this will kind of help with some of the public transport. So and this is typically we think about it in terms of buses, but it could also be things like the rail runner if there's ever an interest in electrifying the rail runner. So those are the primary categories. And I forgot the most important one that most people are most interested in, which is the DC fast charger. It's a huge bucket of money that we're trying to do to install direct current fast chargers and across the state. And so there's money there for 70 of those in P&M service territory. So we're trying to incentivize the installation of 70 of those in this first program.
Well, there's a lot going on there, a lot to unpack.
Go
ahead, Eric.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. John, would you mind explaining, the difference in the charging to these to us?
I was going to ask the same question.
Some folks who may be listening may not understand, and that's part of it, right? Part of the education process of the TEP. So I think it'd be a good opportunity for you to explain the difference between the charging infrastructures.
Absolutely. No, and I'm glad you guys stopped me there because I got halfway through that and I thought to myself, like, we should probably talk about this. So, so when you leave the dealership with your brand new EV, right, usually what you get in the trunk is what's called a level 1 charger. And so this is kind of usually it's a J1772 plug that plugs into the side of your car, like, you would put a gas nozzle in there. And then it goes down to, a 3-prong, a 110 volt. So just a normal outlet, right? So you pull it into your car and you can plug it in there. Usually it's, it's the slowest form of charging, which we actually recommend to charge your vehicle in the slowest possible way most of the time, right? So whenever it makes sense to charge it in the way that is the slowest for your needs. The next step is level 2 charging. And so level 2 charging usually runs off at 220. It's like a dryer plug. And so most folks don't have this in their garage. Sometimes they have to install a dryer plug in their garage. Some of these, especially in New Mexico, might require panel upgrades, right, to be able to service that kind of electrical need. Usually it's a 50 amp requirement. And so there's just a lot of homes that don't have, kind of spare place in their service panel or, available capacity, so to speak, on their own infrastructure. So level 2 will usually charge 10 to 15 miles per hour is what you can expect, right? So if you plug it in overnight, you're going to have a full charge by the time you get up in the morning. And then level 3, which for whatever reason isn't called level 3, it's usually referred to as DC fast charging.
Right.
That's really what you see at the Walmarts, right? Or this Tesla superchargers. It's the 20 to 45 minutes right now is typically what it takes to charge a car from around 20% back up to 80%. And so those are the 3 different categories. And what PNM's program really emphasizes are those last 2 components. There's not really a whole lot of infrastructure need for the level 1 charging. Most people already have available capacity in their garage to be able to plug it in, or outside their garage to plug it in. Really what we're trying to do is to help offset the costs for some of those customers that are interested in installing a level 2 charger in their garage and maybe don't have that that infrastructure there yet, or the DC fast chargers, which will be open to the public. So those are really the 3 kind of primary categories of EV charging. And then it looks like so that's actually a great question. So we got a question in the chat, and that kind of leads me into the second leg. So what we've talked about so far, the rebates and incentives for the TEP. The next part of the program is really around incentivizing charging, when people charge, and to provide people with better electric rates to charge at advantageous times, both for them and for the grid. So, most passenger vehicles are parked 80% of the time or more. And a lot of these are, of course, overnight, right? You pull into the garage at night, you get out of your car, you go and you make supper, and then you don't look at your car again until the next morning. And so what we're trying to do is take advantage of those off-peak times and to provide customers with a super low rate to charge their cars. So right now for residential customers, the pilot rate will be, just north of 3 cents per kilowatt hour. And to put that into perspective, I was looking at the Ford Lightning specs this morning, and they have a 98 kilowatt hour battery. So with that rate, right, if you were able to charge your Ford Lightning overnight on PNM's rate, on this pilot rate, it would cost you about $3 to go from empty to full, as compared to stopping at the gas station.
Pickup truck.
Yeah, a full tank of gas for a pickup truck for $3.
Yeah, that's incredible. And what's the range? The Ford Lightning you're talking about is their F-150 electric vehicle. Yes. What's the range on that? Do you know?
The last thing that I saw was 350 miles. If I remember correctly, it was 350 miles, but I don't think that was towing, right? So that was just kind of normal driving around town. And I think range gets better in the city, right? Because there's a little bit more regenerative braking, and then they're also not using as much of the capacity.
Yeah, well, that's pretty high. That makes it so we can, you can drive from Santa Fe to Albuquerque and back, no problem. The electric vehicles of old, maybe 2015, around that time frame, the range wasn't as high, and so let's say for a trip to Albuquerque, you'd have to be charging down there. But modern electric vehicles, we just bought 17 Chevrolet Bolts here for the city of Santa Fe, and those get about a 260-mile range. So we can easily go down to a meeting in Albuquerque and back without charging. It fills all of our needs to get around Santa Fe. Those vehicles are going to be used by our parking fleet, just driving around the plaza, making sure people are paying their parking meters. Also our seniors division and different departments across the city. We got some funding from the New Mexico legislature a couple years ago to fund this purchase. And just so everyone knows, a part of that, we're going to be installing what John just described as level 2 charging stations at our 3 public parking garages: the Convention Center garage there by City Hall, the Sandoval garage there by the Lenzik, and the Rail Yard garage. So people have more options for charging their vehicles when they're out and about. And it's in addition to a lot of money going into the community from the Volkswagen settlement from the State Environment Department as well. Listeners may remember many years ago, Volkswagen was caught rigging their engines to bypass air quality regulations. And there was a settlement that put a lot of funding towards electric vehicle infrastructure in our state. And I know a lot of charging stations are being installed at all subs across the state, DC fast chargers that you just described. So that's going to make it a lot easier for people to travel around New Mexico in an electric vehicle, in addition to all the DC fast charger incentives that you just said. I don't think we talked about the time to charge in a level 2, but just so everyone knows, for a DC fast charger, it depends on the vehicle, but in general, you're going to go from empty to full in about 20 minutes. And if you are pulling up to the charger on empty, you're sweating bullets. So
That range anxiety will get you for sure.
yeah, you want to make sure you have a plan. That's one thing about driving an electric vehicle. You definitely have to think about how far you're traveling and how much range you have. Of course, it shows on the vehicle, just like many gas vehicles do, how far you have to go to empty. So kind of have to have a plan, but it's not the same. It requires a change of the way you're thinking about it, because we drive our gas vehicles and we notice we're close to empty and we pull into the gas station and top it off. But as you pointed out, John, we're charging our electric vehicles overnight. So every morning when we start the day, if that's the way if you're not working at night or whatever, every morning when you start the day, you're leaving your house or your apartment on full.
No, that actually brings up a good point that I forgot to mention, which is, the DC fast chargers. I talked a little bit about the residential rates and the cost per kilowatt hour. Commercial customers that are familiar with electric rates know that there's usually a component called the demand charge, which is kind of the volume of energy that they require at that specific facility at any given time. And one of the things that we really wanted to do, and which is really innovative, across the country, there's not, to my knowledge at least, there's not another utility that's doing it this way. We've removed the demand charge for commercial customers that are offering charging to customers so it has to be separately metered and separately circuited, but customers can benefit from a volumetric rate. And so what that means is that there's a flat cost per kilowatt hour based on the time that the charger is being used, which will allow these businesses to understand, kind of their expected operating costs, and then to be able to turn that around and to offer that back to customers, right, in a more stable way that doesn't fluctuate quite as much as maybe gas prices do.
That's great. So let's say you pull into a grocery store here in Santa Fe and they have a DC fast charger. That charger is hardwired to, or can be hardwired to their electrical panel, and that can make it so it triggers this demand charge you were talking about, which is basically one 15-minute increment of lots of electricity use, and then that has a significant financial impact on the bill. So you're saying you've worked it out so that the grocery store owner or manager can install an electric vehicle charging station and not worry about that.
Absolutely.
And yeah, you're one of the few utilities doing that. Definitely appreciate that from PNM, because that is a serious concern you're putting in, because these DC fast chargers use a lot of electricity, and you don't want that hitting your electric bill in a bad way. So glad to hear about these rates. You were talking about avoiding peak time with your charging, of course. Just so everyone knows, that's when we're all using the most electricity when we talk about peak time. So I imagine it peaks mostly, morning and evening when we're getting home from our regular jobs, and then in general, just through the day, being higher at night. Is my assumption correct there?
Yeah. So right now, peak times are set. It's all based off of when electricity was the most expensive, right? And as we kind of transition out of fossil fuels and in kind of the older portfolio of generating resources, those times will change, right? But right now, what our peak times is anything from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, right? So it's 60 hours a week that's considered peak times, and those peak times are a little bit more expensive, right, than off-peak times. For the EV charging specific rates, we're shortening that window, really. So the on-peak hours are from 5 to 10. For residential customers all year round. So it's really just a 5-hour window for customers. And then everything outside of that, so what I should say is that from 10 p.m. through 5 a.m. is kind of the charging window. So anything that a customer can do to shift their electric consumption to that time frame will take advantage of that super low rate, because we don't have a way to kind of distinguish between, well, you're charging your car or you're running your dryer. So if they decide to plug their car in and also dry, their clothes from the day, they're able to kind of take advantage of that really low rate. And then the rest of the rate will kind of work the way that it normally does, right? So if most residential customers look at their bill, you'll see that there's different blocks, and then based off of how much you use, the electricity gets more expensive, the more you use it. And so that'll still be the same, except for that window of time where it's a lot lower rate.
All right, great. So plug in your Ford F-150 Lightning at 10 o'clock at night, and you can fill it up for $3. If you're just tuning in, this is Climate Matters. This is a monthly sustainability radio show brought to you by the city of Santa Fe. We air on Suave Radio every fourth Wednesday from 8:30 to 9. We're talking with John and Eric from PNM about an upcoming electric vehicle car show. It'll be this Saturday, October 1st at the Plaza. 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Come out, check out some electric vehicles, talk to people, see what it's all about. John, what kind of vehicles are going to be there?
So we've got a wide range of vehicles that are coming. So I mean, lots of folks. We've got almost every model of Tesla that's made. So we've got the Model 3, the Model X, and the Model Y. And then we also have here. Let me pull up the list real quick. So I'm not.
Well,
We've got
we'll have our Leaf there. I drive around town in a Nissan Leaf. A little less exciting than the Teslas, I guess, but it's a more affordable option, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a couple of BMWs. So we've got the BMW X5 and then the i3, both of which are plug-in hybrids. Great cars. We've got a GMC EV Hummer that's going to be at the show. A Hyundai Kona, which is a pretty sharp little car.
And I know Santa Fe Public Schools recently got an electric bus. I've heard rumors that the bus will be there.
Absolutely. Yeah, the bus will be there, which is great because it's a great opportunity for the public schools to kind of talk about, all the different initiatives that they're working on right now. There's a lot of public funding available to schools right now to offset the cost of buying an electric bus and to retiring a diesel equivalent.
Right. And I met with them the other day. They're going to be buying more electric buses. And which of course has the added benefit, those diesel buses with the tailpipe being close to kids' faces adds a added challenge that electric buses overcome. So definitely love seeing that happen. And just so everyone knows, speaking of buses, the Blue Bus, NCRTD, they're buying some electric buses as well for certain routes, including the route from Santa Fe to Taos. So you'll be able to hop on the Blue Bus here pretty soon and not even hear an engine. Know that
That's awesome.
We're all working together to reduce our emissions around here. Here at the Santa Fe, we do have a directive from City Council to transition our administrative fleet to electric by 2025. And I mentioned earlier, we have 17 electric vehicles coming our way, working on buying more. So I said our administrative vehicles, that directive doesn't apply to fire and police because public safety is paramount concern. And but the police department recently bought a bunch of gas hybrids, meaning they don't plug into the wall, but just kind of what people know is like the Toyota Prius kind of model. But this is like a Ford Escape. It's called the Interceptor, which is their model that's made as a police car. So going to have less emissions from our police fleet as well.
That's wicked cool. Neil, I'm kind of curious. So as you guys look to transition your fleet, I mean, what's really the motivating, kind of factor for the city of Santa Fe? I mean, is it because I mean, I know that there's tons of benefits, right? And I'm curious which one of them tipped the scale for you guys.
Yeah, it's really a two-pronged reasoning. One is, we do have a goal to be carbon neutral by 2040, established by our city council in 2018. We can't do that with vehicles powered by gasoline or diesel. And the other is that these vehicles offer a lower total cost of ownership over 7 years, 150,000 miles. Different fleet managers have their own way of determining the end of life for when vehicles need to leave the fleet and go to auction. But because there's so less maintenance requirements for electric vehicles, there are just less moving parts, less things that can go wrong, and the price of electricity being lower and stable compared to gasoline or diesel. We have to spend a little bit more upfront, but over the lifetime we spend less. So it's just sound fiscal management for anyone managing a fleet. For the vehicles, I mean, some vehicles, let's say, public works or parks, like they need pickup trucks to haul trailers and things like that. And there are some electric options for pickup trucks, but you look at other vehicles, like I mentioned, administrative vehicles. We're going to meetings, we're doing mail runs across town, not driving a whole lot or something like that. It makes sense to do it in an electric vehicle that has no emissions, doesn't have to drive a lot. And even our staff going around doing permitting, people who are in the field all day, these vehicles that have 260 miles of range, it wouldn't be a problem driving around Santa Fe for the whole day, especially if you're plugging in at your lunch hour. We got these charging stations being installed at our garages. So, sorry, kind of a long answer, but one being the emissions reduction, two being the sound fiscal management. What about you? I know you've been transitioning your fleet to electric. What was the primary reason there?
So I mean, I think for us it's the same, right? I mean, PNM is absolutely 100% interested in moving towards a renewable portfolio, right? And part of that is putting our money where our mouth is. And so, over time we've gotten more and more interested in full electrics. I think what tipped the scale most recently was just supply chain constraints. Battery electric vehicles became a little bit more available, and so it's kind of spurred us to adopt maybe a little bit faster than we were initially planning to. But it's been a good thing, and it's also it's helped some of the folks that maybe are a little bit more resistant to the new technology. They've gotten to drive some of these vehicles, and that's kind of the third thing I like to lead with. The best reason that I can think of for EVs that's most widely acceptable is that they're fun. I don't know if for anybody who hasn't driven one, go talk to a dealership like tomorrow and just ask them to drive one. I promise
really
you
move.
will.
Yeah.
Yes, you will
They
be
move
very
quick.
interested in buying one, just because they're so much fun, right? And so. Right now, we have quite a few plug-in hybrid electric vehicles across our fleet, mostly for the same purpose, right? I mean, on top of, kind of the bucket trucks and the guys that go out there and work on the transmission and the distribution system. We've got a whole host of different kind of, maybe at different use cases, right? And so you've got folks that are driving around, doing very similar kind of things to the parking enforcement folks that you were referencing, the meter readers. We also have field coordinators and field inspectors, and people that are going from this job site to another job site to do an inspection. Maybe for example, the story that comes to mind right now is we have one Toyota RAV4 plug-in hybrid electric vehicle in our solar department. And we were instructed to stop putting gasoline in it because it runs through gasoline so seldom. The range on it's only like 60 miles, but we just don't use gas in it. And so they've asked us.
Going bad in the vehicle.
It was, yeah,
Wow.
and the stabilizers weren't even working. So we've had that car for like 18 months. I think it's used 2 tanks of gas.
Wow. I just want to explain to everyone when we say plug-in hybrid, that's a vehicle you plug it into the wall to charge just like a regular electric vehicle, but it also has a gas engine so that when you run out of your electric charge, it can switch to that and have a longer range.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and to me, it's fascinating, right? Because a lot of people were a little nervous about range at first, and so they're like, "Well, I'll get a plug-in hybrid because it'll, I've got a little bit more security." And we're finding that a lot of those use cases on a day-to-day basis, right? They just don't quite get to the point where they need that gasoline engine. Unless they're going down south. Some of our folks will have to drive from Albuquerque to Silver City, and in that use case, they might have to, but it's less.
Yeah, we just got a plug-in hybrid for our fleet, a Mitsubishi Outlander, that's being used by our Keep Santa Fe Beautiful coordinator. She really likes the car, and it shows you how it's transitioning from the electric motor and using the battery to gasoline. The priority when you're first driving it, it's fully charged, it's all electric, but then as the electric charge goes down, it's a mix. So it's not like you're driving down I-25 with the electric motor and then like bam, all of a sudden the gas engine engages. You don't notice the shift.
It's seamless.
It's seamless. Yeah. Well, John, Eric, thank you so much for joining me on this week's show. In case you missed it, this Saturday, October 1st, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on the Plaza, Electric Vehicle Car Show. Come check out all the electric vehicles. Say hi to us. Ask us all the questions you have. That's what we're there for. We hope to see you there at 10 to 5, October 1st.
Awesome.
This has been Climate Matters. We'll see you next month, October 26th, 8:30. Take care.
Thank you
Thanks
so much
for having us. Appreciate it.